kind of excited to see how that product works as far as muck removal, because we do have a lot of areas that sometimes the muck will be 2-3 foot deep. So, question.
Have you had any recommendations for lily pads?
No, because we don't have lily pads on the river. Don't put it in there yet. So I don't deal with that. So you have to, my recommendation is go to weedersdigest.com, and he's got solutions for lily pads. there's cutting tools. I know that there is one, I don't know how effective it is. It's like a weed whacker, but it's boat mounted, and it's got a sickle, a skill saw blade at the bottom, and you just mow them off. It seemed like it would be a lot of work, but lily pads are, yeah, they're a serious problem. Does it? Yeah, I would think pulling through that would, right? Yeah, exactly. So this is the positive handle cutting tool. I prefer it over the weed one, but it really doesn't have that long of a handle. But I like it because you can kind of push your way out like sweeping your shop. This is my favorite throwable. It's a tweeter. When it loads up, it's a little hard to shake it off, but got a picture. I was going to add it to my presentation, but I took this down to one of the area boat launches just yesterday to get all those weeds, and just threw it out maybe 15 feet, brought it in, and initially it was, I thought I caught a stick, but it was pulling so many roots with that first pull until it filled up. That it was just hard to pull, and so I was impressed at how many root masses I got when I got it to the top. But it was draped over probably close to 8-10 inches deep on the bend, and 4 to 6 foot long when I finally pulled it all the way up on the dock. So it's very efficient at both pulling roots and getting the fish out. But I like it because you can throw it upside down and it doesn't care. This will still cut if it happens to flop wrong way up, but it's designed, see, it's got a little bevel so that it doesn't dig the blades into the shoreline. If you throw it upside down, it's not as effective. So, but a lot of people use them. A lot of people like them. Those are the cutters. And then obviously the rakes, the big tooth rake. You see the monofilament that I was talking about. And everybody I know who uses one of these effectively puts the floats on it, so it floats out there. It's a lot easier than the rest. You can hook floats up to regular landscape rake and work. This is the super industrial power tool, so everybody can make one of these. Double-sided, very nice. And the weight on the bottom is essential for keeping it down. This is the one that you got to pull up with the tractor. They make a 2-foot version of this, as they say, is a hand pull, but you have to be a lot stronger than me to hand pull even a 2-footer. So, but it's a big enough swath that you can do a serious amount of shoreline with it. If you want to spend a day out there, it has to be a 2-person operation, one to pull it out, drop it off, the other one to pull back in. But I think you can be really efficient at using that. I don't know of anybody who has done it on a regular basis, but when I tried it, it was a pile that tall probably that we pulled out, and the full concrete block worth of mass. So you pull a lot of vegetation out with it when you want to do it. Most of that was Eladia, but which is really fluffy. But I'm assuming that if you were in a milfoil bed, it would just the way that milfoil grows with a single stop up and then it comes into an umbrella, that you would wrap that stuff up like spaghetti and you'd get a pretty good retrieval on it. So those are what I had for tools. Anybody have any questions before we move on to plants? Yeah.
Does this one cut, but it doesn't collect because it goes this way? Is that right?
Well, yeah, these are just the covers for razor blade. It
right,
cuts,
but it
right?
Cuts, but
and it just the
angle.
stuff just kind of floats away, right? I mean, eventually it does, and that's one reason. Another reason I don't really like it is because the preferred method for using this one is you toss it out there and you bring in the slack and then you jerk it really fast because you want it to cut and not collect.
And not collect.
Right,
Okay.
because otherwise it'll just cut and it'll wrap up the first batch of weeds, and then it's like any of the other ones, and it rides up over top of the rest of the bed. So you might as well not throw it out that far in the first place.
I got you.
But yeah, if you're doing it right and it's just cutting, then you have to collect it all. It doesn't come in. Whereas the weed ray and the tea weeder, I got very little fragmentation when I was using both of those. I mean, you're still gonna get some, but most of it wraps up on the fins or the T when you bring it in.
Thank you.
So which of these implements are available from your department to rent?
Ah, that is a great question for somebody from the weed board. So, I don't know. I know that the weed roller is, which I don't have one of. Looks like that, but it's got the smaller fins or smaller blades, and the weed ray. But yeah, so, somebody else.
It's on the poster in the back of the room that they have.
On the poster in the back of the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
But on that razor weed roller, is that something you can find online, you know, where that's sold?
Yeah, you just look up, the, muck roller. What's that? Amazon? Yeah, yeah, but,
It's like 250, something like that.
yep, that's about what I paid for it. 235 somewhere in there. Anybody else have any questions? All right, well, let's move over to the tray of weeds.
That is fine.
All right, well, gather around, anybody, whatever you can to see. Just have some pretty, typical veg that you'd see on the shoreline. Sorry, I don't know what's going on in lakes because I don't have to pay attention to that. And I try to look at myself only what I have to pay attention to. But, I've got them kind of broke out into the, native and non-native piles. And, I just want to go over some of the, things that I was mentioning in there in the presentation. So, just to go over the rough ID to start with, this big pile of spaghetti is Elodea or common pondweed. And it's the one that looks like shag carpet when it's growing heavy down in the water. And it will, when you get a good coverage of it, you know, and you got a little rolling thing, that's exactly what it looks like. It looks like the ground, but it's, you know, 6 inches to 2 feet tall. And it's completely a monoculture out there, which is fantastic. The fish love it. It's a native plant, but
good.
it's beneficial. But you know, and this is what I encourage people to try to enhance on the margins of their property. This and coontail, which this big pile of stuff, which looks very similar to milfoil, that's coontail. And it's odd, it must just be early in the development, but this is kind of soft and supple. I do have a couple samples in here that are really coarse and fibrous, like usually you'd expect it to see. So I'm thinking that these are just growing so fast, they haven't put the fibrous stuff in there. Either that or we have a new variant that I don't know. This doesn't flower. Neither Elodea that I know of, or at least if it does, it's not something that you can notice. The white flower is on this, which is Aquatic buttercup. So,
Okay.
an on milfoil lookalike. I brought it in, it had the gloss or the blooms on it. This one's about ready to pop, but all the pretty ones were gone. Actually, the flower looks a lot like the duck potato flower, but smaller, quite a bit smaller. So it's white and yellow like that.
So this one, we get, if I'm identifying it right, it kind of creates a whole layer kind of on the surface. I mean, it just looks like a thick mat.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got these little flowers and you can actually go and I just rake it off. I don't
And it'll just
I don't
break
even
off on the
cut it,
base,
I
yeah.
just kind of rake it off.
It
That's
grows a lot
beneficial.
like milfoil grows. It grows with a single stalk up and then it'll branch out like an umbrella.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why I said, oh, look at that. That's horrible milfoil. And then,
Right.
yeah, somebody said, no, that's not milfoil.
Milfoil doesn't have a flower.
No, it does. Milfoil's flower. I actually found one. I had it in here. It's just about ready to pop, but that's the flowering stem that sticks up above the water. And if you have a thick mat of it, you'll have these like thousands of them in a
What color?
red. Yeah, it's not a bright red, pink red, maroon. It's a little darker than that color. Definitely not pink. What's that?
What was the one in the corner?
Aquatic buttercup. So that's buttercup. So of the non-natives in here, we've got milfoil, which you can see the red stem. Not all milfoil has the red stem. The red is actually from the oils. Milfoil is a very oily plant. If you have a bay that's got a ton of milfoil, when it starts to die back in the fall and it's all auto fragmenting, it releases those oils and you'll get a sheen on your whole bay. Looks like somebody just had a major two-stroke motor incident out there, but it's just the milfoil releasing that. The Selkirk High School actually did a study and tried to extract it for fuel production. But oddly enough, they couldn't get enough milfoil. They had all this other stuff mixed in with it. And the high oil concentration is really only in the milfoil. So their study didn't work, but it was fun for a biofuel project for the school. But yeah, you can see the red stem, the feather-like leaves. If you just pull out a leaf, pluck one. This isn't in mint condition, but it's very feather shaped too, and all the filaments are out there at the full length. So that's an easy way to identify milfoil. But it's got a red stem most of the time. Some of them you'll see have just a regular green stem like you'd see on most of your other aquatic beds. So it doesn't always have the pink. This is curly leaf pondweed. So like they were saying, it dies back this time of year. So most of it's kind of icky muck, but there's several of them that are still in good enough shape. The greener leaves, you can feel the texture on them if you just feel the leaves, and anybody wants to pass that around. And at the end, that one may even have one. Nope, it doesn't have one. At the end is where those Turon develops. The last set of like 9 or so leaves grow really thick, and they're very short, about ½ inch long each of those spines off the Turon, and it actually is corkscrew shaped, so it kind of corkscrews itself down into the sediment and plants the next year's plant. But that's curly pondweed. You can see it's the crinkly leaf looks like a Ruffles serrated potato chip, right? You did a cross section, but you can see at the very edge, it's got the teeth on it as well. So that's curly pondweed. This is a hodgepodge of a lot of the other pondweeds that we had out here. And you can see these will grow up from the deep. I tried to keep some with the full length fragments, but these are pretty short in comparison, but you'll see these growing up in 20 feet of water. And when they top out, they develop that spade shape, floating almost like a little lily pad type of leaf. But they go all the way up from the bottom into the water column. This is more coontail. So it's more of the really fibrous stuff. Throw that in that pile over there, and you can, when we're done, you can just come by and look and feel. Aquatic equisetum horsetail. We've got a lot of that out along the shoreline now. I don't know if it's native or non-native, but native. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot more of it than I remember in the future. But we've got.
Is that good or bad?
That would be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Good or bad?
Well, it depends on where it's growing. I've never been too impressed with it, but apparently I don't know if it's a nuisance species or not. It's native, so I don't know.
Sandpaper.
Yeah, native and good and bad is all in perspective. 30%. Since it's native, I don't have to control it. So it's good for me. This was growing entirely aquatic. It may be a subterrestrial, but it was different than any other plant I've collected before now. So it's just a aquatic grass. I had a large leaf Potamogeton in here that I want to show you. Oh, here it is. So that's our native Potamogeton that looks a lot like curly leaf. The leaves are a little broader. They're not as crinkled and they don't have a serrated edge. But we get a lot of that growing out the river. And this was another new one that I found. It might be a little tiny juvenile knotweed, but I'm not sure. I've never seen it out there before. It was grown in about 6 inches of water. So it's always good to know what new ones are. But here's another native Potamogeton. They're all just when you have a big mass of it, everybody I know of that just all calls them, doesn't matter what they are, they're eelgrass. It's just a thick grassy looking stuff down there that it can dominate like this and you just mow through it, but it's native veg and it doesn't really hurt anything. This is the duck potato that I was talking about that sometimes is easy to mistake when it's really young for flowering rush, which is over there, because the base of the cross section on these is horseshoe shaped. It's not round, but at certain times of the year, the cross section is almost triangular and you can mistake it. So never hurts at that point to just let it grow a little bit and see if it develops a leaf like that. If it does, it's a native plant. You don't have to worry about it. And it's got a really pretty sort of white flower on it. But the roots, had a bulb in here. No, guess I don't. Later on, it'll develop a bulb down in the roots too. All right. So any question on these before I move on? Let me see if I got this. Okay. So this is actually Japanese knotweed. Somebody told me. I'm not familiar with it. It doesn't have to be aquatic, but this is our native knotweed that will trip you if you walk along the bank collecting plants for demonstration. It's not bad. I kind of think with the way that it grows along the shoreline, both in below the surface and above up the bank, that it wouldn't be bad for bank stabilization. So if you've got it, I would encourage you to keep it. But that's our native knotweed. It's got a very pretty flower on it as well. But apparently this is nasty. So keep your eyes open for that and let the weed board know if you're seeing it, because this probably needs to get removed. All right, let me see. This is the real fibrous coontail I was talking about, but it can grow in really heavy mats out there as well. If it's again, this is fantastic fish habitat. So if you like the fish around your property, I would encourage you to keep this where possible, but it's just as big of a nuisance as anything else. If it's in the way where you're pulling your boat in and out, you know, it doesn't hurt to control where you need to control weeds. Yeah.
If you are eradicating native weeds, is there a penalty like there is for picking native flowers? Or?
No, I mean, look in the blue book. I think it has the regulations. I'm not real familiar with the permit, but I thought that there was a specific area that you were allowed to treat everything in, like a certain number of square feet, but I don't know for sure, and I haven't looked at the new book. But yeah, you're allowed to control all nuisance vegetation on at least part of your shore. I don't know if what that limit is, but it should be in the blue book. So this little guy, this tells you how easy it is for this thing to spread. This was on the concrete after I got done setting it out, because it wants to jump ship and go colonate somewhere else. But this is maybe one of these flowering rush. So you can see the root hairs and the little budules that is starting to produce. Those pop off and they roll down along the bank and plant somewhere else. The waterfowl love to dig in through this stuff and eat it. It's probably highly nutritious for us, but it just spreads it everywhere. And this was a gift from Idaho, like all of our noxious weeds, and it's just going to keep coming and keep coming. So we have to stay diligent with this, which is the primary job of those dash divers. When we first brought them into the county, that's what they were doing. They were trying to find and suck up all of the fragments of these little guys that they could get every year. So that's still ongoing. This is the beautiful flower. That's why we have it, probably. It's very pretty. That's what it looks like when it grows up the bank enough or along the shoreline high enough so that it actually produces a terrestrial or dry land leaf. I didn't find any underwater ones, but what you'll see, it's really easy to tell when you walk by it, because it's almost got a rhubarb coloration to the base of the stalk, and it's kind of a sickly green brown for the rest of it. It doesn't look like it's a very healthy plant, but it's growing like mad and sending off buds all the time. But that's the telltale sign of this flowering rush. Once it gets old enough that you can start see this red coming into the stem, and of course the very distinctive triangle shaped stem.
Oh, wow.
Pass that around. Luckily, the leaves don't propagate, so it's about the only thing you can do. The only piece of this plant that won't grow another plant is the leaves and the stem off the flowering body, but the flowers, apparently there's little nodules, I don't know what the term is, they aren't seeds that come off of the flowers that can also spread. Bulbs down there at the base, yes. Yep, but yeah, that's just one more unpleasant surprise. This guy, the other bucket here on the side is yellow flag iris. Unfortunately, all the flowers have already turned to seed pods, but you can see how robust this plant is. This one has already been sprayed at least once and it came back. It's actually growing right there at the project. So now I'm going to keep them from spraying it, and I'm just going to keep it in my own little stash so I always know where to go to find one for this demonstration every year. But it tells you how easy it is for it to spread when it rips off in that float that I was talking about. You know how the roots and the tubers get buoyant. Well, that's how this got there, because it was growing out of basically a pile of rocks. There was no sediment for it to have seeded and grown from, or even with a root. So it came in a raft with its own dirt, landed there on a flood, and it's been growing there ever since. So I don't have to pass those around. Couple directions. Go ahead. You can pop one open, but there you can see the tubers. So the tubers, when it gets really dense, they produce gas into the soil that it locks it in there, and they're buoyant themselves, and they just rip up a giant chunk of your shoreline in the right flood conditions, and then you've got a big hole. So that's yellow flag iris. So anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So we've got our native plants that are beneficial for the fishing. Is there a time where they've done a benefit and then we can take them out? You know, like now or?
Well, you know, it's a good question. There's enough veg on the shoreline that, you know, and few enough property owners that have developed right now, you're not gonna impact our fisheries by treating your whole shoreline if you want to. At some point, I mean, we always like to discourage that kind of behavior, because at some point more is going to develop. If that's the mentality, then there isn't going to be any spot that's got a substantial amount. But the answer specifically is no, because it's, when it dies back, the stuff that stays there, that's why I like the coontail so much, is in the winter, it's winter habitat, because they'll be down in that dead vegetation a lot of the young of the year. Otherwise, they're just free game to the big. And so as much of the time, not only for fish habitat, but for erosion control, bank stability, and those kind of things, if you can leave a nice, healthy native vegetation along as much of your shoreline as you're willing to give up, the better you are. Great question, though. Anybody else? Excellent. All right. Well, thank you.
What kind of gas? Oxide or oxygen?
Well, both. It's been a long time since I studied the photosynthetic synthesis cycle, but yeah, daytime when they're producing oxygen, at night they're actually consuming oxygen. So that's why in the heavy weed beds it'll go completely anoxic at night, even though it's, you know, it's like, wow, there's plants over there, it should be just exploding with oxygen. But yeah, day and night you get huge swings. So in our river, when you this time of year, a little later, you'll see a bunch of suckers just floating with no apparent injury. And I think that that's what is happening to those ones that just happen to be in the thick or close enough to the weed beds. They just die of lack of oxygen, and you know they'll.
Do you monitor that? The oxygen, carbon dioxide?
No, not for any of the studies that I've had to do so far. This is another little, looks like it'd be something you'd see on a sushi plate, but that's another native photomagnetic. Oh, we talked about the carex out there, or the other algae name that I can't remember. This is the plant-like algae that is also a nice ground cover to keep out there, because it just keeps fragments of milfoil from seeding sometimes. The thicker the better, and it only grows up, you know, 6 to 18 inches or so, maybe not 18, 6 to 12 from what I've seen in our river. But it's just a fibrous plant-like algae. So and we've got it in some of well, pretty much anywhere along the shoreline, you'll see tufts of it. But sometimes you get a nice batch of it and it gives you a nice ground cover.
Do any of these fish, native fish, graze on these?
I don't know.
Aquatic insects.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question.
What's the question?
Do any of our fish graze on the veg? And I would say,
Carp will do it a little bit.
right, grass carp, there's grass carp to do it, but we don't have any grass carp in the
Yeah.
river.
Yeah.
Was that, yeah.
Little Spokane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, it's a home for bugs. Even if you look through this stuff, which I filtered a little bit, there'll be you know, tons of bugs in here if you look long enough. Damselfly larvae, stonefly larvae, that's what the fish are eating. They may even look like they're eating the plants, but they're eating the bugs on the plant.
Do like a stomach content analysis on some fish. They have all kinds of plants in there, which are just
Yeah,
midges just
Homes-
sitting on. the
homes
end
for
of the
bugs,
plant.
right? Yep. Yeah, exactly. We'll find it in your diet. Yep. Yeah, all right. Well, I think that's about all I have. Anybody, no more questions? So we're good to go. Feel free to come by and touch and feel all you want.